What do you think George Washington would think of our health in today's culture? Our health insurance. George Washington would be embarrassed with how our health insurance is today. George Washington would be ashamed with our food that is poisoned, that's supposed to be healthy. George Washington had many debilitating diseases throughout his whole life. George Washington had the flu, he had tuberculosis, he had dysentery many times, he had a cheek erosion, he had an erosion or boil kind of problem on his groin, he had quinsy, he had smallpox, he had malaria many times, he had black canker, and he also had something called carbuncle. And it is believed, because of all these diseases that George Washington had throughout his whole life into his late 60s, George Washington was couldn't have children. George Washington was sterile, essentially. That's what is believed because of all these diseases. Now, would George Washington want to have better health? Obviously, yes. If he was alive today, what would he do? We don't really know, but we do know that George Washington wouldn't want any of these diseases and would do what it takes to get better health. I think because George Washington loved to read, George Washington would want to have a mixture of holistic home remedies, biblical-based remedies, because he was a spiritual person. And then he would probably want to go to the doctor or emergency room for certain diseases that he had. And he would have probably lived longer. Now, it's embarrassing that this health insurance we have, George Washington would think, I would assume, we pay so much into this, and then what? We get more bills and more worry after the doctor and the hospital, and they don't really tell us about our health and give us another pill? Or the food that's poisoned that's supposed to be healthy, and we think it's okay. And I know it's our own choice, and yes, we do make our own decisions for ourselves and our health, but at some point people just go with the flow and trust the doctor. And sometimes the doctors just go with the flow and trust the system. And I think it's sad that there's this untrusting balance between culture and its citizens and people and doctors, when why don't we want people to live? It's because it's the adversary. It's the evil, spiritual wickedness in high places that doesn't want people to live long. And that's what's poisoning our food. George Washington, like I said, or like I've mentioned in other videos, likes to read. He read a lot. So he'd want to read up about health. If I was George Washington, I would want to read books about cancer because he had a cancerous erosion on his face. I would suggest to George Washington this book here, A World Without Cancer, the story of vitamin B17. This book here, and then this book here, Cancer Free with Food. These two books, because cancer is so rampant in our culture today. And George Washington loved to read, so I'm going to show you many books that George Washington may want to read to have better health. Another book, because George Washington lived on a farm, would be natural, homeopathic, holistic medicine. He may have had those things. A lot of things that George Washington had for his for solutions to his problems were bloodletting, which that's very interesting and weird to me. But he had bloodletting and cold compacts. And so these holistic books are Sustain Me by Barbara O'Neill. Fantastic book, simple, great, with powerful read about how awesome it is to have your health in your hands. And this book here gives a lot of great, awesome, holistic medicine and remedies for everyday needs. The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. I think George Washington would buy both of these books about holistic medicine. Another book that George Washington would read is probably this one, A Home Doctor, because the doctors that came to see George Washington were many miles away, 15, 20 miles, or even closer, depends on the situation. It's understanding your body and how you can be your own doctor at home while waiting for a doctor in the meantime. If you have an emergency, you definitely should go to the hospital though. Now, to understand diet in today's culture, understand what's really going on, I would suggest Food Fix and then also Good Energy. These two books here are phenomenal books. Good Energy, you see the title there. Phenomenal books will understand our current culture and our current food industry and how to put the power of food and your diet in your hands. I highly suggest these two books. Very powerful. Because George Washington wanted to understand not just food or politics or the law or agriculture. When he studied this topic, he wanted to understand everything about it. He had thousands of books, and he never went to school, ever. He never went to school, so he was very fascinated with reading. And most importantly, the most important book that I think George Washington would read is the Bible, to give comfort to the soul in time of need and in time of great victory and joyous occasion, joyousness, and in times of sorrow, in times of victory, and in times of sadness. No matter what it is, we always go to the Word, always go to the Bible. So this is just my take on George Washington and health and what he most likely would say. We don't know for sure, but because he loved to read, he might pick up these books, then he might also talk to a doctor. Nothing wrong with talking to a doctor, but the power of your health is in your hands. Thank you.